Welcome, everyone, to a Songwriter Spotlight evening featuring Grammy-winning artist and one of this generation's finest songwriters, Rodney Crowell, in a special conversation with country music's iconic performer and one of the most admired and influential women in music, Emmylou Harris. Today's occasion is to celebrate the publication of Rodney's extraordinary lyric book, Word for Word. We are live streaming this program through Zoom webinar, and it will be recorded. I'm Linda Cass, owner of Gramercy Books in the Columbus, Ohio area. 3 booksellers have partnered with Gramercy Books in presenting tonight's event. This multi-store partnership brings together several hundred viewers from 4 states. Tonight's co-presenters are Willow Bookshop in Houston, Rodney's hometown, Bookends and Beginnings in Evanston, Illinois, and Literati in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Big thanks to these wonderful bookstores and to Kathy Bernard, Nina Barrett, and John Gainiard, who have led their respective stores in hosting tonight's program with the help of their local performance venues, where Rodney will be holding concerts in the coming weeks. Natalie's Grandview with Zeppelin Productions in Columbus, the Arc in Ann Arbor, Space in Evanston, and the Heights in Houston. Let me preview the next hour or so for you. After introductions, Rodney and Emmylou will talk for about 35 minutes. That will be followed by 15 minutes or so for your questions submitted in the Q&A box, and that's typically located on the bottom of your screen. This is where I will be taking your questions for Rodney and Emmylou during the latter portion of this program. You can write your questions into this box at any time. Another tool is a chat box. This allows you to chat among yourselves, but it will not be monitored by the panelists. Click on the chat box icon now. It will open a column on the right side of your screen with a link to an upcoming live stream conversation between Rolling Stone magazine founder Jan Wenner and longtime Rock and Roll Hall of Fame trustee Alec Whiteman about Jan's memoir, also out today, Like a Rolling Stone. If you click on the link, you can learn more about this virtual program to be held next month. But now, let's meet tonight's special guests. From growing up in Texas to living in his car, to landing his first publishing deal, to writing 15 #1 songs for Emmylou Harris, Johnny Cash, Keith Urban, and others, Rodney Crowell is among the songwriting giants. His lavishly illustrated lyric book, Word for Word, is a treasure. Emmylou Harris, who once employed Rodney as a guitarist, harmony singer, and arranger in her hot band, introduced many listeners to his finely crafted songs, including Till I Gain Control Again, Leaving Louisiana in the Broad Daylight, I Ain't Living Long Like This, even Cowgirls Get the Blues, and Ashes by Now. They all went on to become hits for other performers, while Rodney went on to carve out a career as the first country singer to earn 5 #1 singles from one album. Rodney continued writing and recording classics while other artists continued to take his songs to the top of the charts, including Bob Seger's recording of Shame on the Moon, Tim McGraw's recording of Please Remember Me, and Keith Urban's cover of Making Memories of Us. In this intimate look at Rodney's songs and their lyrics, Word for Word includes pages from his work notebooks and personal photographs, along with memories and backstories that reveal the heart of one of this generation's finest songwriters. Rodney Crowell has been honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award in Songwriting from the Americana Music Association, the prestigious SCAP Founders Award, the Academy of Country Music's Poets Award, and induction into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. He is the author of the acclaimed memoir, China Berry Sidewalks. Rodney, it's an honor for Gramercy Books, Willow Bookshop, Bookends and Beginnings, and Literati to welcome you tonight and to feature your extraordinary lyric book.
I don't know what to say after all of that. You just put
all
forward.
you said.
Yeah. This is my friend Emmylou.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, and in conversation with Rodney, Emmylou Harris. Well, Emmylou, one of the most admired and influential women in music, a 14-time Grammy winner and Billboard Century Award recipient, Emmylou's contribution as a singer and songwriter spans 40 years. She's recorded more than 25 albums and has lent her talents to countless fellow artists' recordings. In recognition of her remarkable career, She was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2008 and earned a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award one decade later. Emmylou, on behalf of my 3 indie bookstore partners, I share our excitement and gratitude to you for joining us this evening.
Any excuse to visit with my pal Rodney.
Thanks to all of you in our audience for being with us this evening. I will return later to moderate your questions. Now, a warm welcome to Rodney Crowell and Emmylou Harris.
Yeah.
Well, it's
All right, so we're just supposed to have a conversation. To the listeners, I guess they're listening in on us, but Rodney came into my house here with my very own copy of this fantastic book. I can't wait to dig into it. I've already been looking, making sure he put me in here, and he put me way too much, but I'm honored.
Yeah, well, as I inscribed to you, I mean, if it weren't for you, this book wouldn't exist, probably. Or if it did, it would have existed in another form, because truly, I mean, you started recording my songs, and you were so admired, and your records were so cool.
Yeah, but you know, Rodney, we're getting into a philosophy here, because I always felt that one thing about you and your talent was that you were inevitable. And I'm just so, the fact that our paths intersected was just one of those cosmic things that happened. So friendship that is still going on today. I think we met in 1974, and the friendship is still going on, the collaborations. But I benefited as much from Rodney being kind of the first one to hear his songs, because we kind of lived close, and he would come over and say, I just wrote this. So I would have first crack at these wonderful songs. And so that lent some credibility to me. See, it was a really one of those beautiful things where it goes both ways. And we're not just saying this for the audience. We really like each other a lot. As you can probably tell.
I think the audience might be interested in this. And as part of this, besides lyrics of songs and art and what have you, I wrote some backstory prose.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was describing, after we first met in Washington, D.C., when you were playing with Child Herald.
Right. I had gotten my first record contract, but I had not recorded yet. To let them know, my producer and I were looking for songs. My producer, Brian Ahern, and he had just found you, and he had played me a cassette of your songs, and
It was a cassette. It wasn't reel to reel.
Yeah, it was a cassette. Okay. I remember cassette.
My memory was that it was Tails Out reel to reel.
Well, you probably had one of those, but you said, I think the cassette came to Toronto where Brian was, and but I interrupted your story. But the thing is that we were both just kind of hovering around that place where maybe things were going to work out for us as a career or not, and to be able to meet at that time, I think was really important.
Yes, I think that one of the most interesting things about the beginning of our friendship and our professional relationship was I quit Nashville. After I met you, I moved to Austin, and I was only there a short period of time. And I don't know how you called me. You couldn't have texted me. It was, and you said, I'm playing in Armadillo World Headquarters in early January, 75. Yeah. He said, come and sing with me. We had spent a night singing together. And I said, okay. And you had the Angel Band. And I came up and I sang with you. It was so great. The audience was
great.
It was sort of my first taste of, wow, it's great. When 4 or 5 people who are watching a football game on TV or actually listen to you. But after the show, backstage, you said, hey, I'm going to to Los Angeles tomorrow. And you don't remember this, but
I do not remember it,
promise
but
you
it's such a
did.
great story.
I
I know it has
promise
to
the
be true.
People, it is so true. Because you said, I'm going to LA tomorrow. You want to go? I got a spare ticket. I said, yeah. You know, then you
You
didn't
just
have,
happened to have a spare plane ticket, but it
we
could have happened.
back then you could travel on somebody else's.
Oh, that's true.
And here's the second thing about it. It was first class.
Boy, it's a great story.
So I rode from Austin to Nashville. To LA with you first class. So, this is going to be good.
Yeah, well, we got you to LA, and then it was really important that you record on that, because the first song that I recorded for my first album that had just come out was your song Bluebird Wine, which I think was the walk-up music that your listeners were hearing. And well, you have to tell them about the first time that we heard that. When we heard my recording of it, because people might think that you get real jaded, but I still get excited if I hear something that I've done, coming out either the radio or like in a store. And you can imagine the first time Rodney and I actually happened to be together. We're shopping in Westwood in LA.
A boutique.
It was a boutique, kind of a unisex boutique.
And Bluebird Wine comes on the radio or
whatever
maybe they were playing the album or something.
I think it was just a early version of Pandora, something like that.
Yeah, well, you remember that movie, That Thing You Do, that Tom Hanks put together?
Never saw that.
You never, you have to see that.
All right,
movie.
Rodney.
Really, because the first time these kids heard their record on the air,
right,
they were dancing around, skipping around.
Well, we did it.
That's what we did, and then we go bouncing up to the cashier, and you said, "That's me. I was singing on the radio," and she kind of.
And you said, and that's my
song. I wrote
song.
the song, and she said, "Nah," she didn't believe us. We couldn't convince her that it was really us. Yes.
I guess we showed her.
Yeah. Where is she now?
But Rodney, besides bringing his songs and his Rodneyness into my life, he also was a member of my first band. My first band after the record came out, which we called ourselves arrogantly so the Hot Band. It was kind of a joke, but it sort of stuck because we did have James Burton. We did have part of Elvis Presley's band, and they were pretty hot. Great musicians. And so Rodney was in the band, but Rodney also introduced me to some people who became very important already in Rodney's life, in my life. Guy Clark, another fantastic songwriter who's featured in this book very prominently, and his wife, who's also a songwriter, Susanna Clark. So, I haven't had a chance to look through it, but there's a lot of stories of friendship in here, I can tell you, even without reading it now. It's a chronicle of a pretty special time in my life, and the people that, well, you need your, Susanna used to call them her jewelry, J-U-R-Y, not jewelry.
Yeah.
People that their opinion mattered. You weren't talking about the record company or even the public, really, but you had a group of people that was kind of like your musical family, people that you respected and you wanted to impress them, or you wanted to you wanted to show your wares to them. You wanted their approval, and you were also inspired by them. And because I think all artists need that kind of musical family, and certainly Rodney and I have been part of the same musical family since that fateful day in 1974.
Let me do this. Look out. There's something that I can read that's kind of sums up what you were just talking about. It should be here pretty close to the front. Come on now. I hear this is sort of an introduction to the book. There's a story my friend Susanna liked to tell about an Oklahoma City woman who, while visiting the Museo Reina Sofia in Madrid, noticed a smallish man daubing paint on the gallery's most famous painting. Frantically, she cried out for a security guard to stop the desecration of the Guernica, to which the watchman casually replied, "That, senor, is Picasso. He works here." No doubt my friend's account, which is most likely untrue, is a variation on the famous Leonardo da Vinci quote, "Art is never finished, only abandoned." That excerpt, I'm not ashamed to say, applies to some of the records I've made. But as a songwriter, however, I'm far more comfortable with the Picasso yarn than the Da Vinci Declaration. Revision is for me an open-ended part of the song-making process. Therefore, if you're at all familiar with the lyrics I've chosen to put forward in this retrospective, don't be surprised if some of my compositions have been modified to suit my ever-evolving sensibilities. As far as I know, none of these words are chiseled in stone. And by the way, over the years, I've heard a few songwriters say, "My songs are my children," to which I've been known to reply, "If my songs are my children, they need to get out of the house and get a job."
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, I can't wait to dig into this, Rodney. This is so much history for me here. And of course, the other thing that Rodney did for me, I mean, early on, we did collaborate on a couple of songs because I think I was always intimidated starting as a folk singer and singing all those great songs of the folk artists at the time, to actually be a writer. And especially, you know, sort of you run into Rodney and Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt and you think, well, I'll just record those songs that are like plucked and just pluck them right off the tree. And I had access to all these wonderful writers. But Rodney has always encouraged me as a songwriter. And early on, we did Amarillo and Tulsa Queen, which I still, especially Tulsa Queen, is one of my favorite compositions. But then in later years, he pulled me into the writing room for the last collaboration that you and I did.
Yeah,
And
that was
that was fun to do that. But yeah, so Rodney's been one of my jury. You know, that's a funny word to say, actually. J-U-R-Y, jury. Jury.
So
Just
yeah,
jury, but I was-
duty.
Jury. I have jury duty.
Yeah.
He's part of my jury.
There's a
So
couple of U vowels there.
yeah.
Is this a question for Emmy? Oh, look, we're getting questions.
Oh, we have to ignore it though.
No.
What is the story you hope is in the book, Emmylou?
Well, I'm not sure because, you know, Rodney, oh yes, I do have a story because this is why I thought that Rodney should write another book. He told me about, you know, how he kind of how I ended up knowing him. And it's such a circuitous story about when you were a songwriter in Nashville and you were playing a happy hour and you were absolutely not allowed to play any of your own composition.
It's in the book.
It's in the book. So hallelujah.
It's in the book.
Because I always thought that's a story that needs to be told.
Yeah.
Good.
You want me to give the quick Harlan White. You remember Harlan White?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know. I knew that.
It was a friend
I
of
know
mine.
that. Yeah.
He somehow got some money together when nobody had any money and bought some studio time at Jack Clement's studio, which now sound important right over here.
Oh, okay.
So he more or less hired me on as his producer. I had no credentials whatsoever. So I went and we were going to record his songs, and I had this kind of loose arrangement with a girl who I guess you might have, maybe I could have called her my girlfriend.
It's still
Mainly, she was just let me stay with her sometimes. So, of course, I invited her.
Yeah.
And then it got word, Guy and Susanna sent word somehow, telephone and say, hey, so Guy and Susanna in town said, we're going to drop by. So I'm busy working and I did, Jack Clemens Studio back then had a black light poster, like a disappearing stairwell into like a hippie lounge with black light posters up.
I wonder what went on in there, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what went on. While I was busy recording with Harlan, Townes Van Zandt took my girlfriend up and seduced her. Unbeknownst to me, I'm like, yeah, my girlfriend is watching me work in the studio. Yeah, I got it.
Really impressive.
Check me out, man. So the next day, of course, I go around to Susanna and guys, and Susanna's grinning when I walk in the door. And she says, you really think you're hot stuff, don't you? I said, well, it was pretty fun last night. And she said, it was a lot more fun for Townes when he took your girlfriend upstairs and seduced her. And then she laughed at me, and it's like, she really enjoyed it because she had that, that really playful thing where you got too puffed up with yourself.
Yeah, you couldn't put anything over.
She would stick the pen in the balloon.
Right.
So I was like, hell. So I got mad and I wrote this song called You Can't Keep Me Here in Tennessee. And I had a job at the Jolly Ox just 4 blocks from here. But the rules were I had to sing all covers. And my boss said, if you sing an original song, you're going to be fired on the spot. So I was going to Austin. I said, I'm going to Austin. I'm through with this. And so at the end of my set, I said, this is a song I just written. And I played it. My boss comes down the aisle away, says, and there's another gentleman trailing him. A guy that
they were coming like from different areas. As you told me this story, they were coming converging on you.
There are 2 aisleways that converged. My boss got there, a couple of seconds ahead and said, I told you, if you sing an original song, you're fired. You're fired. And the guy behind him was Jerry Reed's manager, Harry Warner, and says, well, good. Because my boss wants to record that song tomorrow, and we want to hire him to write songs. That was it. The next morning, I went to the studio, RCA, Studio A, and Chet Atkins was sitting there when I walked in. He said, you can't make this up. I walked in, and Chet Atkins says, did you write this song we're going to record? Yes, sir. I said, well, come over here. Let me show you how we're going to do it. And then the next thing I know, I'm out there in the studio teaching Buddy Harman and Jimmy Capps, and take your pick, Dave Kirby, all these great musicians, and
showing them your song that you just wrote.
Yeah, and that was it. That's how I got my first song recorded.
Wow.
It's in the book.
Finally, because I've always thought that. Because, it's interesting, people that we sort of, for the most part, we come kind of fully formed in front of our audience, sort of. And I think it's interesting to know the pathways and things that really, the stars almost have to be aligned. Because sometimes I think that it obviously is talent, but luck, and whatever that magic thing is of stars being aligned and fortuitous meetings. In my life, I see that as so clearly.
And also chances. Because it wasn't much of a chance. I knew I was leaving town.
Yeah.
Who can you trust if your girlfriend disappears?
Yeah, you owe Townes a lot.
I did. Actually, in the book, I say I should have given them credit for the song.
If you go back, you can go back and back and back and back and follow your life backwards, and to see all the different circumstances and coincidences and things. Who knows if there's a pattern or if everything is faded, who knows what it is, but it's still a pretty good ride. You know, that's the way I look at it.
Well, another thing happened that's interesting, the songs in the book, I don't know if I told you this, but, you know, I was you and Graham singing had a really profound effect on me. When I stumbled onto Grievous Angel, I listened to it over and over again because I said, man, this is the kind of singing that I grew up around, you know, where people sang harmony with each other.
Yeah.
If somebody started singing, somebody threw the
Right.
harmony part on. So whenever I went to Toronto and we struck up a collaborative relationship. I came back to Nashville and Harry, the guy who had signed me,
Yeah.
I said, I just met this really, really talented and interesting singer, and she's got a career going, and I want to go and work with her, and I sure would like to take my songs with me. And he said, well, okay, which ones do you want? You know,
It's
and I took
amazing.
Bluebird Wine, Till I Gain Control Again, American Dream, and Ashes by Now. They just gave them
They
back
understand that Rodney was
to,
under
that won't
contract.
happen now.
Won't
That won't
happen.
happen.
Rodney was under contract. And so just the fact but I think that was the kind of culture of Nashville back then.
Then
When
it
it was
was.
still kind of a small, it's like a colony. It was a colony, and a lot of it was about friendships. The one thing that gets me sometimes in fiction now, and I don't want to have a bone to pick with the TV show Nashville, because they did actually put a lot of songs out there for people.
Mhm.
But this idea that it's this backstabbing, you know, like people are always ready to, you know, climb all over somebody. I mean, that is not in my experience
No.
in the music business ever. In fact, I've always felt that I was so glad that I could sing so I could hang out with musicians and songwriters and singers, because they were generous people and interesting people, and they always told the best stories. And so I always counted myself lucky, you know, to be able to be part of that community. I don't mean to sound like a Pollyanna, but, you know, I've had people turn me on to songs that, you know, they didn't write. They just thought, hey, I heard this is a great song, you know, when they had nothing to gain from it. In fact, yeah, I love to pitch songs to people, not necessarily my own songs, but I love the idea of hearing a certain voice. You know, I can hear a person's voice, and then I'll hear a song and I'll think, I want to hear that person's voice. Not only their voice, but their take, you know, their style, what they bring to it. I want to hear those words and that melody. I want to put those two things together and cook it, you know, and see. Nobody ever pays any attention to me, but it's something that I fantasize about. Other people do fantasy football. I do fantasy song pitching. So what else do we have to talk about?
I think we should.
Oh,
just
can I just tell people that you have a new granddaughter?
Oh, yes, you can.
Yes, Evie.
Evie.
Oh, wow.
Evie
Okay.
Kane.
Evie Kane. Yeah.
Evie Kane. Yeah, she was born the 17th of August.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Another little Leo, because
She's a little Leo.
you're a
girl.
Leo.
I am. It looked for a minute like August 7th would be Evie's birthday, but she hung on.
She
for a
was not
minute.
ready to come
She
out.
wasn't ready for it. So now I actually have 5 grandchildren.
Great.
Yeah, and it's 4 girls and 1 boy. With my 4 daughters, it's like, you know, we do bring girls into
Yeah,
the world.
right. And hallelujah, because we need more of that double X chromosome out here in the mix right now. I think the world is ready for that.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I can't wait to meet her. You know. Yeah, I had to have 2 grandchildren, but mainly I'm into dogs. So I have my own dogs, and I'm into senior dogs. So if I can give a Well, there's a question here that's more interesting than what I was going to say, so you answer that.
Has being a father, grandfather changed your songwriting? Certainly being a father changed my songwriting because suddenly I had to wake up around 7 a.m.
You couldn't keep late hours anymore.
I couldn't keep late hours anymore, and I'm more prone to get work done when I wake up.
Fresh.
It really did. It's like it kind of, because before grandchildren, I would go to bed at
Yeah,
4 in the morning,
right.
6 in the morning. And
The early hours are the most creative hours. You know, you think about an artist, into the wee hours of the morning, and sleeping until, noon. But really, the best part of the day is when it is even before the sun's up and the sun's just getting ready to come up. There's just something about that when the world is waking up.
the world is new again.
It's new again. And because I've gotten into that, I don't know, no matter what time I go to bed, if I am, working or something, doing a show, I still wake up around 6. And I get up, I don't stay in bed because I have dogs and cats to feed. So I might as well, and I'm glad after I get up, I'm glad that I did.
Yes.
Next question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rodney and I see each other all the time, so we know everything about each other. So we need people to ask us some stuff and
Ask us something we don't.
stump the artist.
Something we don't know the answer to.
Okay, I'm back, you guys. I'm back and I'm going to moderate these questions. There's a lot of them, okay? And I'll try to kind of organize them because they're all over, a lot of specifics and a lot about your relationship. Let me just start with a question that Steve Paul asked early on. He said he got the book last week, that it looks wonderful. He asked about a Rodney sheet music book. He's been searching for your tunes, and he says just a few are available. And when might a songbook of sheet music be in the works?
Wow.
Sheet music.
Yeah, see, there's that question. Is sheet? I'm a primitive artist, so I know nothing about writing music. It seems like I kind of got disinterested in that early on when you recorded a few of my songs and they got transposed to sheet music.
Right.
Emery Gordy would sight read the way that they were written out, and he would sight read the melody, and the melody wasn't even anywhere close to what I'd written or what you had sung. And I said, well, I don't trust this sheet music thing at all. Yeah, but I say that knowing that once upon a time, sheet music was the only way people got to share, music was brought into your home. So I don't want to poo-poo on that, but I guess if someone came up to me and volunteered to write
do it, and then we could have Emery Gordy check it.
Yeah.
Emery Gordy, for those who don't know, is extraordinary musician, bass player, played with Elvis Presley, and he was lucky enough to have him in the hot band. Maybe of all the music, there was something about Emery. He was one of the best, and I'll tell a story on Emery that he. And I don't mean to slam John Denver because I actually like John Denver, but when he left the hot band and joined John Denver's band, I guess maybe the arrangements in John's songbook or in his repertoire were not. They didn't vary very much. So Emery would have one of the texts, the guitar text. He would say, I want you to tune one of my bass strings down a half a step before every show, and don't tell me which string it is. And so from the first note, he would have to, what do you call it? When you
transpose.
That.
Once he figured out which string.
Yeah, transpose. But it was kind of a mental exercise. So that's the Emery Gordy we're talking about. Extraordinary musician. And he was always a step ahead of everybody. He would figure out the arrangement before everyone else. So he would amuse himself by telling the worst jokes. I mean, I don't mean bad jokes, but really like, oh, really? You know,
Yeah,
not really
that's
funny.
not funny, Emery. And he knew it wasn't funny.
And he knew it wasn't funny, but he was just is still our dear Emery. And Emery, you're probably not watching this, but we love
Hey,
you.
brother.
Here's another question Parker McDonald had. Rodney, how did Guy Clark influence your music? You talk a lot about that in the book.
Yeah, well, it's to break it down to the simplest form. Guy let me hang around.
Mm-hmm.
And Guy had this, what Guy was a curator of all the songwriters in early 70s that were around. Guy had relationships with Mickey Newbury and Townes Van Zandt, and then upcomers like me. And he curated this in such a way where he would sort of let me know, hey kid, your songs are not good enough to be played in this wee hour session, but you do know some old Appalachian folk ballads. Sing those until you get a song worth singing. And that's what I did. That's how I was able to hang with those guys. I knew, Trace of Little Footprints in the Snow and My Son Calls Another Man Daddy and all of those Appalachian Dead Baby songs that I learned from my dad. And that's how I got to hang long enough to figure out how to construct a song. And Bluebird Wine was the first one that I ever really kind of threw in my hat in the ring. And Guy nodded and said, okay, you're getting somewhere. And that was really what it was about. It's just, our jury just, okay, you're getting somewhere. So, but after that, we spent a lot of time. I used to go over and we would listen to Dylan Thomas reading his poetry aloud, and Guy would over and over again and say, look, our songs have to, without the music, if our songs without the music sound as good as Dylan Thomas reading Under the Milkwood, then we're getting somewhere. So oftentimes with a new song, Guy would say, don't sing it to me, look me in the eye and tell me the words. And it was great because if it was a throwaway line or a soft rhyme or something, I couldn't look him in the eye and deliver the line. So I'd have to look away, and it's like, all right, I got to go back and work on that. And that was so, and to sum all of that up, what I learned from Guy that was the most valuable then and still now is self-editing. Self-editing is the songwriter's most valuable tool.
Interesting. I noticed that in the very beginning of your book, you quoted Guy, and that he reiterated his belief that words to a well-written song should sound as good read aloud as they do sung, and certainly that's very true of your songs. So great question. There's another question about your friendship, the two of you. Allie McHugh asks, she says, you became friends early in your careers and at a pivotal time. What is one of the biggest struggles musically, personally, or career-wise that your friendship helped you through? Tough, big question.
Oh.
I have something very valuable for me as a man. Susanna Clark and Emmylou sort of came into my life. Susanna, a couple of years ahead of Emmylou, and one of the things, and as a young man, it was about conquest. If there was a woman, a young woman, it was like, it wasn't about seeing them and knowing them, it was about owning them and sexually having conquest. I grew up in Texas, what do you expect? Susanna, when I first met Susanna, she said, she was older than me by, a good
It was
11
stunningly
years.
beautiful.
Yeah, she
Stunningly beautiful woman.
just said, I'm going to teach you how to be friends with a woman.
Mhm.
I said, okay, what do I do? She said, just pay attention. And then by the time Emmy and I became friends, I already had a sense of, oh, this is a really valuable thing. I don't want to mess up. And I want this, I'm being given a gift of friendship. And that's how Emmy has been in my life. It's like she's a sister to me, a brother. And I was an only child growing up. So I had a couple of sisters early on that taught me a lot about being a gentleman, being kind, and being present in the company of women.
Mhm.
And that served me well. Thanks. And
And I was a happy recipient of it, to have this friendship with Rodney, because I don't know, early on, having that band, I had these extraordinary professional musicians. I knew them a little bit, Glendy Harden, Emery Gordy, James Burton, from Elvis Presley's band, because they had recorded on the albums with Graham that I'd done with Graham. But I knew them not as friends, but just as, and I was still a fledgling country singer. I'd come in as a folk singer that didn't really know much about anything about country music. In fact, being a folk singer, I kind of disdained it a little bit, and I didn't exactly understand what was going on. But I took the money, and the chance to go on the road, and on the road with Graham, which was not with those musicians, but through Graham's mentorship, I sort of got converted to country music. And when I found myself in the studio again, and then on the road with James and Glendy and Emery, and even though they were only a few years older, it was like they were the adults and I was the child in a way. But Rodney, we were almost the same age, and we were kind of from that same, I don't know, background. We were kind of like hippies and country music fans, In fact, Rodney has a term for it. He called it, we're the field hippies, not the country hippies, which is another story. Yeah. And so we were kind of, and then there was
so
John.
you had an ally.
Yeah, I had an ally, and also John Ware was there too. He was kind of in the middle there, but we formed this amazing family as a band. Mm-hmm. But and I think Rodney, with his humor and his energy, his Rodneyness, I don't know how to describe it any other way, but he's just about the best company in the world. And so traveling on the road with this band was, I found my bliss, as Joseph Campbell, said, this is the life for me. And I'm still doing it, and I think all my bands and all the people that I've worked with there's been that kind of ethic, that kind of feel as a group of everyone being equal, and everyone out there just to make music because it's what we love. I know, once again, it sounds a little Pollyanna, but it's true. It's very real. And I have had that from thence on. And I think Rodney had a lot to do with it, establishing that kind of culture, that kind of feeling about what a band can be and what a group of musicians can be.
Yeah. That's great. Robbie asked a question, actually, kind of ties in with what you're talking about, but he wants to know if there's any plans you have for a live performance, the two of you in the future.
Well, it's not on the books, but that doesn't mean it won't happen.
Well, I know. Rodney and I, there's always something. I'm always doing, asking my friends to do live fundraisers for. I'm involved in dog rescue. I'm also involved in a social enterprise here in town that helps, disadvantaged youth as well as homeless animals. And so my friends are always getting phone calls, and they say, "Oh, it's Emmy."
And
And also,
I do
well,
fundraising too.
well, true, we all do
and
our fundraising, so I'm sure at some point you're gonna see Rodney and I on a stage at a club or a venue somewhere raising money for something.
Mhm.
Because
would
you
be
know, you have had, when you have been as blessed as Rodney and I think I speak for just about any musician who is able to make their living doing something they love that they're good at. You are so grateful and you want to give back. And it's
It's
there's
the
a
right thing
need.
to do.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do, and you feel almost a need to do it.
Mhm. That's great. That's great. Well, we're grateful for what you're doing. We question came in from Chris. We have a few more minutes for some more questions. Wondering how your book will fit in, Rodney, with your upcoming live dates. He says, and might we get a Chinaberry Sidewalks too? He said he'd love to read a bio sometime after the
Yeah.
time with your parents. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there is some prose in word for word, that some backstories, some side stories, and I think the first question was, would there the upcoming shows? The upcoming shows I'm going to do are really focused on the book, and it'll be a one man show, and I'll do some reading and storytelling and play some songs and sign books. That's what I'll be doing. It'll be book focused, but mostly songs. 60% songs and 40% shooting the breeze.
Okay, great. Well, we're looking forward to it. Nina,
One other thing on that question. I have pages started on another memoir. It won't be Chinaberry Sidewalks 2. It'll be something entirely different. It won't be about any career that I've had. I am committed to, I'll never write about my career. This book is writing about my career, but I'll tell stories about people that I come across, and I've got an understanding of what I want to do, and I got quite a few pages done.
mhm.
I don't know when it'll be done, but it's in the works, and Emmy is working on her memoir too. So
We're not gonna talk about that.
Well,
the news is out all over town.
one of the backstories that you do talk about that I'd love to, maybe everyone would want to hear a little more detail, was when, the two of you met in 1974, that was a great backstory about how, the two of you first got together. Would you share that with us?
You can read the book when it comes out. That's keeping that to myself.
Yeah,
It's
that's,
a long story.
Emmy's got,
That's actually in Rodney's book, a little bit of it.
what will be interesting is when Emmy completes her book, then we can compare the two.
Okay.
Because as I say, I still don't remember having that plane ticket or ever flying first class before the age of 35. But it's such a great, I know it had to happen, and there must have been some very interesting circumstances.
Well, I'm prone to tall tales, but if it didn't happen, it
It
should
should have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, how would
Well,
I?
it could have been that Brian flew us, we came out because he was the producer, and he was Anne Murray's producer, and so very well established. And he is the one who found Rodney through Brian's publishing company, and played Rodney's songs for me when we were looking for material for the first album that he was going to produce on me. So that connection, and I'm sure Brian would only fly first class. So he probably brought us along.
Well, I remember sitting by you in first class thinking,
This
I'm
is the
going
life.
places.
This is the life, yeah. I could get used to this.
Yeah, okay. What else y'all got?
Yeah.
What else do you want to know?
Okay, here's another one. Nina from Bookends and Beginnings, she asked, what's it like to hear a song you wrote covered by another artist for the first time? Does it ever sound totally wrong? Does it ever sound more right than when you wrote it?
Yes. Yes. Bob Seger doing Shame on the Moon sounded so much more right than when I wrote it. Emmylou's version of Till I Gain Control Again sounded so right. And there have been many others. Roger Daltrey's reading of Ashes by Now, which was never released, used to make my children scream when he sang the chorus. You know, baby, my daughters were 5, 6, 4 like that, and they would just scream like Beatlemania. And I said, they don't do that when I sing it, you know? And then there were other versions of my song that I just thought, God, that's not even close. The first couple of times I voiced that dissatisfaction, I learned really quickly that if someone didn't do a very good job, if someone was kind enough, interested enough to record one of my songs, and if I didn't like it, none of my business.
Right.
If
They heard something that touched them, and that you have to be grateful for that.
and if there's a way I want to hear it done, then I should do it that way.
Yeah.
Well, we have time for one more question, and I'm going to ask a question that Fred Burton posed. He says, both of your voices are amazing, and I've been following you since listening to the Grand Ole Opry. What's next for each of you?
Dinner.
Yeah, that's right. Emmy doesn't eat before she works. She eats after work.
Well,
I go drive home and see my mother-in-law and father-in-law who are, they have
and
their,
let your dog out.
let my dog out, and well, they would have let Mono
Okay.
out. But career-wise, I have a new album that'll be out next year that I recorded up in Chicago. It's pretty nice. I like it a lot. After that, I don't really have for much. You know, I'll continue to perform. We'll raise money now and again. You know, just to continue to try to get better at what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this, what an extraordinary musical journey you both have had. Your longtime friendship and collaboration is inspiring, as is the enormous influence of your songs and storytelling on everyone who listens. So thank you so much, Rodney and Emmylou, for what you've done, and also for being with us tonight and having this conversation.
Yeah, we should thank Emmy for letting us do this at her house.
And yes, and Emmylou for, you know,
I thank you for coming to me. All I had to do is just sit here, enjoy the conversation, and it's and get I got my own copy inscribed to me in this wonderful book, which I can't wait to just really just dig into. Yeah.
there's a great picture of you about midway in there. I just love it.
Oh, listening.
And I want to thank also our viewing audience for joining us and for the great questions that they asked. I want to encourage everyone to let your friends know about Word for Word. It's a great, extraordinary lyric book. And I also just want to remind everyone of the links in the chat box so they can purchase Rodney's lyric treasure from their local independent bookstore represented tonight. So we have links to each store so you can
Support your
purchase.
local bookstore.
Yes, your local independent
Yeah,
bookstore
support them.
is your friend.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much. And we also have a link if you want to learn more about the non-winter program on October 11th. And also wanted to let everyone know Rodney's going to be performing in each of your cities. His September 29th concert in Evanston Space is sold out, as is your November 11th concert on November 11th concert at Natalie's in Columbus. But there still are tickets available, and we have the link to Houston's The Heights and Ann Arbor's The Arc coming up, respectively, October 18th and November 9th. So people sign up. Again, many thanks to you, Rodney, and you, Emmylou, and on behalf of Gramercy Books, Blue Willow Bookshop, Bookends and Beginnings, and Literati. We are so very grateful and for this conversation, and also for your wonderful music and storytelling, and to you, our audience, also for spending part of your evening with us. Now you guys can go enjoy your dinner. Okay. Thank you so much.